Good evening, everyone.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. Looks like we're going to Vav. So we'll get started. So it says here in Vav, Hatababa Kisnin, right? So now this is a big issue, right? Big topic here. Um, so what are we talking about? We're talking about bread, which is not your standard bread, right? So what does that mean? That it's more like something, for dessert, or for snack. We're going to get into all kinds of definitions about, what these things are. There's different definitions, and it's going to, we're going to do a comprehensive discussion about this. So where is this brought down? Right? It's in Brachot Membet Amud Aleph. Rabbi Mona Omer Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Pata Ba Bekisnin Mevarchin Alem Hamotzi V'Asi. Right. So there's one opinion that says that this kind of bread we make hamotzi. The blessing is hamotzi. But the conclusion there is that halacha is not like him. And we asked about this regarding Rabbi Yehuda said, Amar Shmuel, lachmaniot me'arvin alehem umbarchin alehem hamotzi. Right, so it says that regarding lachmaniot, which is a type of bread, okay, Uh, it says that we can make eruv with that, for Yom Tov. We talked about making eruv tavshilin, and also the blessing is hamotzi. V'shane shani hatam dekava seudataylu alayu. So he said that's different. You know why? Because over there he's making his seudah on that bread, and that's why he makes hamotzi. So what does that mean? He's eating the amount that it takes to have a seudah meal, and that's why he makes hamotzi. But if he would eat like just a smaller amount, with something which is not a meal, just a snack, or similar, and then he would make not hamotzi, right? It will be the blessing mezonot. So that's the other option. So, but it says Gemara. But if he didn't make right his seudah from there, his meal, alayu lo, right? Then we're not going to do hamotzi. But tu ita hatam Rabhuna achal teresa rifta benet lata bekava belo barich, right? Also, it says right something interesting that this rabbi he ate like a lot of bread, but he didn't bless. אמר לרב נחמן, עד כפנה אלא כל שאחרים קובעים עליו סעודה, צריך לברך. והסכים רש"י, right? So, like basically this rabbi rebuked him that he didn't bless on that. Right? So, in other words, he tells him, listen, you ate already a lot of bread here, so what are you thinking? What, it's not a meal? What, you already had enough for a meal and more so. So, you should have blessed. That's what he's trying to tell him. So Rashi explains, right, that we're talking here that he ate, again, right, this kind of snack bread, dessert bread, right? That's what Rif says also, Rosh. They all seem to say the same thing, right? That we're talking about that he ate some bread like that. So, by the way, there's a lot of practical halacha that comes from this discussion. We're going to get into a lot of interesting things, and it's going to be interesting, to say the least.
Kavod, the Rif and the Rosh, you said they agreed with the dessert bread?
Right, that they with dessert bread, and Kataba Rif maskana dehecha de'achila. So says the Rif, right? What's the conclusion here? That if he ate it b'torah kisnin, if he ate it just as a snack, b'tchila mevarech ber menozot. So then, what would he do? He would make mezonot. U'basof v'lo krum. In the end, right? Nothing. They won't bless anything. Dehecha de'achila b'torah kiviuta. But if he's doing it as a meal, right? Mevarech alea. Hamotzi, then he's going to do hamotzi, right? B'shalosh brachot, then birkat hamazon. So it really depends on the amount you eat, right? So now you guys are probably already starting to conjure up things in your head, right? Things which come up, like these kinds of discussions. Like for instance, what about pizza? What about right? Rugelach, things like this, right? What about matzah? What about all these things, right? All these things come into these questions. What about calzone, right? What about the Georgian, khachapuri, if you know Georgian food a little bit, right? From my neck of the woods. Khachapuri. What does he bless on khachapuri? You know? So, all that stuff, right? Comes up into this discussion. And also sweet rolls, right? Sweet challah, and many, many other, issues that come up into this discussion. So, right, without further ado, let's move on. So, Rabbeinu Yonah Katav, so that was the riff, right? What we just said. Now comes Rabbeinu Yonah and says, שיש מפרשים דכי אכילה שלא בקביעות אינו מברך לאחריה כלום. Right, as we said, right? Some say that if you ate it as a snack, so then afterwards you won't eat, you won't bless anything, right? By the way, our custom is not like that, right? What we do is we bless ala michya if we have it as a snack. But there is also another opinion that we see here floating around, which is you bless nothing. Okay. Um, and there's another opinion that says Shin Varech Borei Nefashot, right? He's going to do Borei Nefashot, which is not what we do, right? Borei Nefashot we bless for other things, but for Mezonot we do Ala Michya. Okay. The Rosh Katav Shin Varech, the Rosh says Man Shalosh, right? That's what we just said now, right? The Rosh seems to hold like what we have accustomed today. The Chen Katav Rashba, also Rashba says that. The Kachem Divrei Rambam, most of the Rambam. There you go, right? So it seems to be right the prevailing opinion. The right? He says that's the halacha. Oh, there you go, right? That is the halacha. Who says that? The Bet Yosef. The Chena Rosh, Katav Rosh, says also the Rosh. Kol she'achrim kovin alav seudatam. Tzarich lavarech hamotzi v'shalosh brachot. So Rosh also gives you another important rule, right? Which is that if you eat enough of that bread, this type of bread, which others eat that amount as a meal, so then you have to treat it as a meal, hamotzi, wash your hands, and also birkat hamazon. כתב רבנו משה דעים אחרים אינם קובעים אפילו כשהוא קובע. So says Rabbeinu Moshe, right, who is probably the Rambam, right, that if others eat that amount for as a meal, right, even though he himself, means to have it as a snack, right, eno mevarech, he doesn't bless the batar rovazinan. So he says, why? Because we go according to the majority. Ubatat dato. So therefore, the minority gets overruled. Over here. That's what we're saying, right? אצל כל אדם, והרעב"ד כתב, הווה קבע עליו אפילו משהו. Rabbi says a little different opinion, right? That if he's going to make a meal out of it, even if it's a very small amount, minute amount, מברך עליו בתחילה מוציא ובסוף בשלוש ברכות. He's going to do המוציא and ברכת המזון. ונראים דברי רבנו משה. So he says, right, that it seems like we should paskin like the Rambam. ואם מתחילה היה דעתו לאכול מעט, so he says, therefore, if his intention was in the beginning to eat a little bit, right? And so he blessed mezonot, right? He thought, yeah, it's just going to be a snack, I'll have a couple of cupcakes, Yeah, right? But then all of a sudden, right, he started to get a little bit more liberal, right? Eat more and more and more, That's, the appetite is opening up little by little, right? So all of a sudden, right, he downed four cupcakes, right? Oh, that's already a meal, right? Forget about snack. Right? So then he's going to have to change the plan over here, right? Change the course of action. So he started out thinking, I'm going to do it, it's going to be a snack, right? All of a sudden, he started to get hungry, and, he had four cupcakes, right? Oh, so then what you got to do is right now, say Birkat Hamazon because you had a meal. That's what we're saying. So sometimes this can happen, like in the course of the meal, you change your mind or whatever. Then you have to change also the strategy as well. Okay. Even though he didn't do hamotzi in the beginning. Why? Because he thought, I'm going to do it as a snack, right? So he didn't do hamotzi, he did mezonot, and also he didn't wash his hands either, right? You don't wash our hands for mezonot. And then all of a sudden, right, ate a lot of it. Boof, right, got hungry. So then, right, as we said, what is he going to do? He's going to do a Birkat Hamazon, because after all, right, he ate what he ate, right? The proof is in the pudding, the proof is in the cupcakes, right? How many cupcakes did you have? Four? Oh, that's already a meal. Okay. Right? That's the language of the Rosh, right? So he seems to paskin like the Rambam, right? Not like the Ravad, who has a different approach, right? As we said. וגם רבנו יונה, says also רבנו יונה כתב, ואם אחרים אינם קובעים אף על פי שהוא קובע, אינו מברך לאחר הרוב הזינן. So he also says, right, the same thing, that we go according to the majority, and not what you think, is the thing. So again, right, what does that mean? That means that, let's say you, right, you're Mr., health conscious, right? You're on a diet. So for you, two cupcakes is already a meal. Oh, but the problem is most people, don't think two cupcakes is a meal. They think it's a snack, you know. So we don't go after you, Mr. Health Conscious, We go after the majority of the people in the world. Or the majority of people the country that you live in, right? That area that you live in, whatever it is. Okay. So let's move on. And he says, "V'achin aktinan," right? He says that's how we paskin. It says Bit Yosef. Yeah, that's how we paskin. It's true. By the way, just to notify you, right? What are we talking about here? How much is a meal, right? So the truth is, we're going to get into this more, but just to give you right introduction here a little bit. It's a machloket, really. How much, according to one opinion, right, which is Rambam, three egg size, is already a meal. Three is already a meal. But then we have Tosfot, if I'm not mistaken, who says you need four. So therefore, halacha is that if you had three, it's not called a meal. Why is that? Because we go lenient here. Uh, uh, that's better because this way you're not blessing a blessing in vain by saying Birkat Hamazon. So therefore we go lenient and we say until you had four, you don't have to bless Birkat Hamazon. Four egg sizes, right? So four egg sizes, right? How much is that in weight? Right? Approximately, right? This is not precise, 100%, but we're talking around 200 grams. That's already a meal. So you had 200 grams of mezonot, right? You are already inside meal territory. Okay. And if you had like, let's say 150, so according to the Rambam, that would be a meal, but we say, let's be lenient and we'll go until 200, like Tosfot. But because of that, some people are going to be stringent, right? Very God-fearing people. They're going to say, you know what? I don't want to get into a doubt. I'm not sure if the halacha is like the Rambam or Tosfot. So therefore, what I'll do is, I'll have less than 150 or more than 200. This way, I won't get into a machloket here, right? Get into right a dispute between this and that. I don't want to get into that zone where the dispute is, which is between 150 and 200. Okay, whatever. So that's a meal, that's already a meal. Yeah. Um, so that's regarding mezonot, it could be anything, like cake, rugelach, what, hachapuri, right, as I told you, right? All that stuff, mezonot, all kinds of things like that. Calzone, right? The truth is a calzone, some people say it's really a meal, because it's like a white dough. So it's like really bread. Whatever, we're going to get into the whole discussion about these things, but take it step by step. So when we say, right, that others make it as a meal, we're talking about, practically, right, four egg sizes, which is, translating into 200 grams approximately. So you know what it is, right? Sometimes, you go to these the places, the bakeries, and they make these like big Danishes, large Danish, and it's like a giant thing. They're gonna charge you like $5 for that, whatever, right? For argument's sake. Now with inflation, could be $10. You never know what's going on today. But anyway, right? It used to be $5 in the old days. So before years ago, right? Before COVID. So so the thing is that Danish, if you weigh it on a scale, it's like more than 200 grams. So that's already a meal as it is. Your bakery Danish, but of course, right? But of course, the filling, that they have inside there, whatever it may be, right? Cheese, or fruit, whatever, that doesn't count. We're talking only about the dough. Okay, good to know. All right, so let's move on. והגור, it says the הגור, כתוב פירוש, אם קבע סעודתו אלוהו פירוש רבנו אביגדור, so he brings רבנו אביגדור, right, דווקא סעודת ערב בבוקר, ולא סעודת ארעי. So he says we're talking about like a real meal, like the morning meal or the evening meal, right, breakfast, whatever, lunch, right, dinner, the big meals, right, but not, some kind of a snack, something like that, right? We're not talking about that. Like a small meal kind of thing, like a little sandwich, a little thing there. So, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? With two Wonder Breads, right? That's not really such a big meal. That's like a small meal. It's like a mini meal. That's what he's talking about, right? Yeah. Okay, so anyway, right? By the way, the whole thing with the Wonder Bread, if, since we guess they mentioned that, the truth is, that Wonder Bread is a little bit of a problem in terms of the kashrut. You know why? Because they put milk in there. It has milk. Um, so that causes a little bit of a problem. We're going to talk about that also, by the way, that issue. What has to be done, but the truth is that the rabbis forbade, there's this decree like this to put milk into bread, to make dairy bread, unless you make it into like a special shape. Why? Because this way people will know that it's dairy, so they won't eat it together with meat. They made like a decree like this, So the problem is that Wonder Bread has like a regular, shape of a loaf of bread, So that's why halakhically, that's why I don't think it ever has had an OU Wonder Bread, and that's probably the reason why, because of this issue, you know. Otherwise, it's not really there's no non-kosher ingredients in there. The problem is that it's got milk inside. Yeah, so as I got a little bit older in my old, young days, I stopped eating that stuff, because then I realized, that's not really kosher. I mean, it's not proper, whatever. Okay, whatever. So when I say Wonder Bread, take it with a grain of salt. You know, whatever. Okay, so right, I'm not recommending it. Okay. So anyway,
Sara
right,
Lee is quite similar.
I'm sorry.
Sara Lee is a brand that's quite similar, but there's a hexture on that
Okay. Oh,
bread.
there is. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yes, I've never seen that. So what is it also has milk?
it doesn't say parb. There's just the hexture on the bread bag.
Right, but if you look at the ingredients, does it have milk in there?
I didn't read. I just if it doesn't say parb, I assume that it does
That's
have
right,
milk.
but no, but that don't assume because you have to see the ingredients. You got to see that, and you got to see what's in there. That's the whole
Yeah,
thing. Because there are policies about this. With these companies. I don't want to get into it now, right? About these policies, but it doesn't always right reflect the true right composition of this stuff. Whatever, unless you read the ingredients actually. Okay, whatever. That's a different discussion, but I'm not going to get into that now. But anyway, right? Buy normal bread. I don't recommend Wonder Bread. Okay, so anyway, right, getting back to what we said. The who midivre shibur leket, right? So he says it comes from shibur leket. Veleta, so he says not correct. He says this thing. Ela ben seudat erev beboker seudat ara im achar shiur shebnei adam kovin alav mikre kaviyut. So says Bet Yosef, right? His words are not really accurate. He says why? Because it doesn't really matter which meal it is. What really matters is how much you eat. It's like it doesn't matter what we call the meal. That's not the issue. Whether it's breakfast or brunch or lunch. I don't care about that. Call it what you want. But the most important thing is how much did you eat. That's what we that's what we go by. Of course, that's correct. Whatever. I mean, you can't argue with simple logic. Okay, so that was Vav. Yeah, so we'll get into the Shulchan Aruch on that. Michael, do you have a kosher bakery in your area?
there's not. Even the ones that are in Seattle, there I went in there. I saw the hollow. They were selling. There's no kosher people back there cooking it. I'm like the nerve.
So the community over there, like what bread do they eat?
Dave's is a brand that I like.
So they
Sara
just eat
Lee is also
whatever they just
kosher.
eat whatever's on the shelf, right? Basically.
Yeah, basically, there's not a reliable source, and they change what's available.
I see. I see.
Today's
Okay.
the one that I like. I prefer the wheat bread, the darker bread. I like that, and they
Okay.
stopped selling the large size. They only have a small size available. They're getting skimpy.
All right. Okay. Whatever. Anyway, it's good. Okay. I was just wondering, if they have anything there. Okay.
No,
Whatever. But you could.
they have things named kosher deli that have no kosher products in them.
Right. I got you. Anyway, you can get by.
Yeah, yeah.
You can get by. Okay. So anyway, you're good. You're good to go. So anyway, right. I was just wondering. So let's move on to Shulchan Aruch here and see what's going on. Definitely a person who lives in an area where there's no kosher, like Jewish bread. You can buy kosher bread, it's not a problem. No question about that. As long as there are no non-kosher ingredients in there, if there's lard, obviously, right? You can't buy that. But as long as it's vegetable shortening, normal stuff, not really a problem. So anyway, let's go. Yeah, so it says over here like this, Shulchan Aruch, Pat haba b'kisnin, right? Mevarech alav boreh min mezonot, right? As we said, what is the blessing on these types of breads, right? Snack bread, dessert bread, right? Mezonot. Right? Ulachav bracha echad min shalosh. And what do you bless in the end, right? Ala michya, right? Min shalosh. So not like with the opinion that we saw, you bless nothing, right? You do bless something, right? ואם אכל ממנו שיעור שאחרים רגילים כבר בלב, so if you ate enough, which is already something like a meal, others make it like a meal out of it, אף על פי שהוא לא שמע ממנו, שבע ממנו, even though he's not really satiated, right? Could be. He's not really satiated. He ate 200 grams, right? Some 200 grams for some people is a joke, I mean, they don't, that doesn't satiate them. Right? So, let's see Berakat Hamazon. But he says, nevertheless, he has to do Bas Hamotzi and Birkat Hamazon. ומתחילה היה בדעתו לאכול ממנו מעט. So he says, what about if he, his intention in the beginning was to eat a snack, a little bit, right? וברך בורא ממנו מזונות. And he made מזונות. ואחר כך אכל, and then, right? אכל שיעור אחרי של קודמים עליו. All of a sudden, he got hungry, right? And ate more and more and more and more, right? He got up to already the level where it becomes a meal, as we said, right? Which is 4 eggs, right? 200 grams. Yivarech halav b'kat hamazon. Then he has to do b'kat hamazon, right? Because he already ate the amount. Right? That's already a meal. Afa pi shelo berach hamotzi techila. Even though he didn't say hamotzi in the beginning, he said mezonot. But now he turned it into a meal. So, but that's it. It's over. Right? Game over, as they say. Right? It's not a snack anymore. Now it's a meal. ואם אכל שיעור שאחרים אין קובעים עליו, but he says if he ate an amount what other people don't make it as a meal, less than that. Let's say he had like, 100 grams, right? That's not a meal, that's still in the category of a snack, you know. Even though he made it into a meal, right? Some people will make that into a meal. They'll have 100 grams of, let's say, right, some mezonot, some cake, whatever it is, right? Rugelach, God knows, whatever it is. And they'll have some, also some, some main dish, side dish, all that stuff, right? But still, that's not called a meal because you didn't have enough mezonot. You didn't have enough cake, whatever it is, right? Could be the same thing, by the way, with crackers, all these things, like cookies, right? baked confections, all this stuff, right? That were, Okay, so that's the way it goes, you know. So you don't. That's not a meal. By the way, there are some poskim today, you know, who want to say, but today things are different, right? Why? Because today, you know, people eat less bread. You know how it is, right? They don't eat as much as bread as they used to. So therefore, 100 grams is already a meal for most people today. So therefore, they want to say that even according to this Shulchan Aruch here, you know, today most people, make a meal out of two, two like let's say rolls, right? Two rolls is already a meal. Some people even will do it from one roll, right? So if that's the case, they say, right, you should already do Birkat Hamazon and Hamotzi and everything, right? The whole bit. So there is an opinion like that. But my Rabbi Maran Shalom Rav Vadia, he didn't agree with this opinion. He said that, it has to be 4 eggs with 200 grams, otherwise it's not called a meal. So there's room to be lenient with that, because we go lenient with these things, these doubts over here, because it could be a blessing in vain otherwise. So that's the more accepted opinion. That's what the Beit Yosef says later on. We're going to see that. When there's doubts in these areas, we tend to go lenient. That's the direction that we go. So that's the same thing here. But it does make sense though what these people are saying. Today people eat less bread than they used to. Okay, so it's not right. So why is that? Because he says because most people will not make a meal out of that. You know. Okay, whatever. Interesting. That's the story there. I can hear that. Okay. So that's the whole Shulchan Aruch here. So now we'll go to the next one. We're still going to continue with this topic, right? It goes, for quite a while, this whole thing. So we got to cover the whole thing and then we'll understand like the whole picture. This is just the beginning of that. This, is by the way a big source of controversy, in our times. These halachot. There's different opinions, different things there, customs, whatever. There's lots of different, ways of looking at this. We're gonna cover Bezat Hashem, the whole thing. God willing. Okay, let's go back to Bet Yosef. I'll tell you a funny story that I heard about this, right? Which was that, that one of the big rabbis in our generation, this was Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, right? Who was a big posek in Eretz Israel, Ashkenazi posek, right? So they say that one time, he happened to be at a wedding, somebody inviting him to a wedding. So what happened was, right, that after they had the meal at the wedding, the seudah, so the right somebody from that right that family, whatever, gets up, takes the microphone and tells the whole crowd, tells them, all these rolls, right, these sweet rolls that you ate, says they're all mezonot, says so we're not going to make birkat hamazon, at the wedding, right? So once this guy gets up, to say this, right? So some people, got angry, because they hold by the other side. They hold that, what are you talking about? We just had like a big meal, a big wedding, with a big, a 5 course meal. And now you want to tell me, right, that it was a snack? Give me a break, right? So therefore, they objected against this. You know what I mean? So they came to the rabbi. The rabbi was sitting there. They told him, they said, Rabbi, you see this guy got up to the microphone, he's telling them this nonsense, right? In Yiddish, Baba Mises, like children's stories, like grandma stories, What is this business, we got to put this guy in his place. So they told the rabbi, So the rabbi answered them. He says, no, no. He says, don't bother with that. So he tells them, so they said, why not? So he says, he says, because it's a machloket, he tells them it's a dispute, and he says they have what to rely on, that side. So he didn't want them to, to make write a ruckus over this because, he felt that they have what to rely on. Okay, so that shows you something, right? Whatever. Good lesson to learn, so this kind of thing. Okay, so let's go back to Bet Yosef, to Bet Yosef. Let's see what's going on there. So it says in Zayin, right, Umash Piresh Rabbeinu Bepat Abba Bekistin Hu Perush Rabbeinu Hananel. So he says, right, that which the Tur explain what this means, right? In other words, this term, again, right, to reiterate, what is the term? It's called Pat Haba Bekisnin. And that's how the Talmud calls this kind of bread. Right? So how does that translate into English? Pat means bread. Haba means it comes, right? Kisnin, now that's the word which is controversial, because there are different explanations of what that means, right? One explanation of the word kisnin is like kis. So in Hebrew, the word kis means a pocket. So what does that mean? It's bread which has pockets inside, right? What does that mean? It's like it has some kind of a filling inside. As we said, right, like a Danish, which has fruit or cheese and stuff inside there. Calzone, right? As we said, it's got cheese in there, mushrooms, right? Or things like this, right? All kinds of, or they have nuts inside there, right? Filling, sweet stuff, jelly, God knows, whatever it may be, right? All that stuff. So that's khachapuri, as we said, the Georgian dish, right? Okay, so anyway, all this stuff, it's got pockets basically, and inside the pocket, you have your filling. That's one way of describing what this means, right? Then there's another explanation, which means that kisnin means dessert, like, comes with a dessert. So what does that mean? It's dessert bread, like cake, or right, all those kinds of pastries and cookies and stuff like that. And then there's another third explanation, right? We're going to get into this whole thing now, but third explanation, which is, right, it's like language of koses, right? Kisnin, koses. What does koses mean? It's something like, where it's crunchy, it's crispy. So something which is crispy, like a cracker is also under this category, right? Or as we said, right, matzah also is crispy. So some say, right, matzah also should be included in this. We're going to get into that whole discussion, as we move along. So we have three different explanations here. So says the Bet Yosef, right, that the Tur explained it like the Perush of Rabbeinu Hananel, right? That was written by כתב רבנו יונה, פרק כיצד מברכים, וערוך כתבו גם כן, so it's the Aruch also brought that, והרשב"א גם כן כתב גם בדברים הבאים בתוך הסעודה, ופת הבא בכיסנין וכגון אובליאש, ואותם העשויים כמין כיסים, right? So he brings this explanation, right, which we just mentioned, which is that it's got pockets, pockets, like with filling inside there, שממלאים אותם בדבש, right? And they fill it up with honey, right? All kinds of stuff, as we said. There's filling inside there, shkedim, right? Or it could be almonds, right? Or mine besamim, or all kinds of spices, God knows what, whatever it is, right? They put all kinds of stuff in there to fill it up. That's one opinion, right? That we're talking about pockets, as we said. Now he brings the Rambam, right? והרמב"ם כתב פרק ג' בהלכות ברכות שאיסה שנילושה בדבש בשמן או חלב, right? So the Rambam says, no, that's not what it means, right? What it means is that it's a dough which is made, with flavor. It's not just a regular white dough. They put inside there, inside the dough, honey, or right, or oil, right? It's made with oil, the dough, or with halab, or with milk, right? Shibra min tamrin befa, right? And he put all kinds of spices in there, flavors, and he baked it like that, right? So that's pretty much what we're, what we call, like cake, right? Pretty much, right? That's how you make cake, or all kinds of similar things like that, right? Pastries, cake, God knows what, right? All that stuff. Um, that's the other. So, in other words, according to Rambam, let's understand, right? According to Rambam, sweet challah, right? What is the blessing on it? Right? So it's really mezonot, right? According to Rambam. And that's why some communities have a custom, that on sweet challah they make mezonot. Why is that? Because it's sweet bread, and that's not normal bread, according to Rambam, right? That's dessert bread. But the thing is, right, somebody who knows a little bit about culture, different cultures, right, that depends on which country you live in, because there are some countries that they have sweet bread with meals, so it's like a meal. So it depends on where you live, but in the Middle East, in the Eastern countries, they don't eat sweet bread as a meal. They eat it as a dessert, like a snack. Uh, by the way, it's true. I see, like until this day, like when I was younger, people would buy like challah, like they would go to the supermarket, buy some challah, and they didn't eat it as a meal. They just like would snack on it, like take a little piece, like a little birdie, take a little peck, peck it out, eat a little bit, and that's how they would eat challah. They didn't eat it as a meal; they ate it as a snack. So depends on the culture you live in, right? Depends, really. But in the Western culture, we're talking about Europe, and things like that. America, even right, in many places, sweet bread is considered to be a meal. It's not a snack. It's not a dessert. It goes with a meal. So it depends on which culture you live in, right? But the Rambam, who lived where, right? He lived in the Eastern countries, mostly, right? He started out in Spain, it's true, but then he moved on to right to Egypt and Eretz Israel later on. So for him, sweet bread was not a meal; it was a dessert in the countries that he lived in, apparently, right? I don't know how it was in Spain, by the way. I'm not really sure what's the story there. In Spanish culture, is like sweet challah. Is it a meal or is it dessert? Not really sure about that. But in the Eastern countries, Middle East, in the Arab culture also, nobody eats sweet bread with a meal. No, no such a thing like that. That's like taboo. If
It's
you,
like a dessert.
I'm sorry.
It is like a dessert. Like
Right,
after the
exactly,
meal.
exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about Spanish culture?
Yeah, they too.
Dessert,
After,
right?
yeah, yes.
So what with the meal they only have white bread?
Yes, they buy the white bread and
So you
then
see, there you go.
they eat the sweet bread with coffee.
Right, there you go. Oh, okay. So there you go, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, the truth is, that if you know a little bit about history, you know that Spain was conquered by the Arabs, at certain
Yes.
times. So it's really, somewhat of a similar culture.
The Moors, yes. They were 800 years there ago.
Okay, there you go, right? So it all fits in well, right? Can I tell you? And this is how the Rambam formulated his thesis over here, right? According to the cultures they lived in. So that's the second opinion, right? So opinion number one is pockets, right? Pockets, with filling inside. Number two is flavors inside the dough, right? Mixed inside the dough. No pockets. Sweet flavors, right? Spices, all kinds of stuff, things like this, right? And אז יראה מן המצבים ככה. והיה נראה לומר שתהיינו דווקא בשלא נתן מים אלא מעט. אבל אם נתן בה מים הרבה, ואגב דנתן בה גם כן שאר המשקים, כיוון דמיעוטא דין הוא בטלים הם לגבי המים. ויש לאותה עיסת דין פת לכל דבר. ואחי דק לשני, right, so it says like something interesting here, Bet Yosef. So it says it depends on the concentration of, the flavors that you put into the dough. In other words, if you put only a little bit, and it's barely recognizable. So then it's still called bread. But if you put a lot, like the Ashkenazim, right? They put a lot of stuff in there, into the challah. It's like a heavy duty mixture. So that for the Rambam would be mezonot. That's what we're saying, right? That's okay. So, but in Europe, right, it wasn't like that. They made hamotzi on that stuff. That was their Shabbat meal, right? Shabbos meal. For the Ashkenazim, a sweet challah. That's what it is, right? So you see, we're going to see that also in the Ramah. He's going to bring that down. So, okay. דאם לא כתב אבל ממר ישראל, it's okay. But here's the thing, right? איכא למד להגיב דהה, תרוב תבלין דבר מועט הוא, ואפילו הכי מוציאו בתורת לחם מוציא, ותדע, so he says, ג'נינו שווים מפרות נתנה, חייבת בחלב, ואפילו הכי אינן מברך עליו במוציא. Right, so he says, right, in the end, he rejects this notion, the Bet Yosef, and he says, you know what, according to the Rambam, even if you put not so much in there, but as long as you can taste it, it's already mezonot. If it's recognizable. So therefore, it's really interesting, right? In Israel, by the way, something interesting there, that they have, like in Israel, three types of challah, right? Depending on, what your tastes are, right? They have the white challah, which is just white bread, right? They call that, Ashkenazim, they call that water challah. Because it's just made with water, no spices, no eggs, right? No other stuff in there, right? No sugar, no honey, like no raisins, blah blah blah. It's all water challah. They call it water challah. But then you have, right, in Israel, they have two types of sweet challah. They have semi-sweet, which is like not totally sweet, but you can taste it. And then they have the real sweet stuff, which Ashkenazim, they traditionally had on Shabbat. So they have three types. So according to this, right, what the Beit Yosef says over here, even if it's a semi-sweet challah, which is not totally sweet, that would still be mezonot according to Rambam, as long as you can taste it. Okay. So he says, right, I'll read this, דחייבת בחלב ואפילו הכי אינן מברך עליה, מוציא כל שלא קבע עליה, ילקח על כורכך לומר דלאו ומידי דמיקרי לחם טליה מילתא, אלא לא קבעו חכמים לברך מוציא שלוש ברכות אפילו פרקזית, אלא בלחם שדרך בני אדם, לקבוע עליו, דהיינו עיסה שנילושה במים, לבד, בלי שום תערובת, אבל כל שיש בה שום תערובת, מימי פירות או תבלין, כיוון שאין דרך בני אדם לקבוע סעודתם עליהם, לא חייבו על לברך המוציא ושלוש ברכות, אלא אם כן, אחר שיעור שדרך בני אדם לקבוע עליהם. So he says, right, the whole thing, he maps it out, that what? That according to this opinion, the way it works is like this, the rabbis only made this decree to do hamotzi, to wash hands, and to do birkat hamazon, only if it's like flavorless, bread, just water, right? I'm not talking about salt now, right? You can put salt in the bread, that's not a problem. But in terms of other flavors, we don't, if you put other stuff in there, it doesn't taste like normal, bread. That's not hamotzi, according to Rambam. Okay. So that's according to Rambam, right? But here's the thing, right? That according to the language of Bet Yosef, you can see one thing. That only applies in a place where that's the custom to do like that. So the implication is, that if you live in a country which is not accustomed like that they do make meals out of, sweet bread, so then the halacha would be different. That's the way it implies. ורש"י פירש פת שנילושה עם תבלין הרבה ואגוזים ושקדים וערוך פירש עוד בשם רבנו היי שפת הבא בכיסלין הוא כאחין. Right, so this is Rabbeinu Hai, right? Rav Hai Gaon. He's the third opinion. And what is he saying, right? That we're talking about things which are crispy and, crunchy, right? Like crackers. Why is that? Because, people don't usually, do meals with crackers, you know what I mean? It's a snack. Because it's hard, it's not really suitable for a meal so much. It's more like a snack. So it says, so what happens like this, people eat it as a snack, they nibble on it. It's like a nibble, 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 because too hard to be really a meal. It doesn't have the proper texture. Um, by the way, because of this, what we're talking about here, there's a machloket, in the later authorities about melba toasts, whether it's considered to be, mezonot or hamotzi. Some say it's hamotzi, melba toast. I don't know if you guys use this stuff, but the truth is I haven't seen it for a while. This product, whatever it is, but anyway, right? Yeah. So some say it's hamotzi, some say it's mezonot. Why? Because some say it's mezonot because it's like crispy, But like we said over here, right? But some say it's hamotzi. You know why? Because what happens is the way they make it is first they like bake bread, and then they harden it, like in the oven. They make it hard. So originally it wasn't so hard like that. It was like bread, and then it gets hardened. So they say that's like bread, it's like toasted bread basically, That's pretty much what it is. It's toast. So that's bread. Whatever. Okay, it's all discussion about that. Anyway, we can talk about that some other time, right? And let's see what we got here. So yeah, so we got a little bit to go here. Maybe we should finish it. Let's see. Um, מנהג בני אדם שאוכלים ממנו כמעה, וכשאכל רב הונא הרבה, אמר רב נחמן, עד כפנה זה רעב. But he says, if you eat a lot though, right, of even of this stuff, right, you still have, that's like a meal already, because the amount is already, a lot, right, as we said. 4 eggs, which is 200 grams, ממנו, ולא בתורת כסנין, וצריך לברך אחריה בדברי בקר. So you have to do ברכת המזון as well, if you had a large amount. Right, לדברי הגאון, וכל לחם צידם יבש, היה ניקודים, right? תרגומו, בכל לחם זה בדהון יבש והבה כיסלין עד כאן השנו, בעניין הלכה, so it says Beit Yosef, right? What's halacha, bottom line, right? Now we saw 3 opinions over here, right? So what's halacha? Given the stick of the midi rabbanan, so since it's a doubt, because we're not sure here, right? Which of these opinions is really, the true, right, approach, and we're not really sure. It's a safek, it's a doubt. So therefore, naktina kedira kulam says we go like all of them. Right? In other words, we go lenient, right? That each one of these characteristics will make the bread into mezonot and not hamotzi. So whether it's the pockets, right, as we said, ושקדים כגון שנקראים ריש כל השווה או דלחשו ובין עיסה שירבו בה מפירות, or whether it's as we said, right, you have sweet bread, right, all that stuff, or minet tabrin, or spices, right, all kinds of things like that. Ben שנקראים bishkogash, gikoshkos, all these kinds of names, right, that we don't have today. From the good old days, right? God knows where these names comes from. Maybe from Spain, maybe from other places. Kulam din pateba kisnin. So he says, therefore we go like all of them, these opinions. Right? So we say they're all mezonot, these types of breads. יש להם שאינו מברך אליהם המוציא בשלוש ברכות. We don't bless, right, the hamotzi and birkat hamazon and these things. Ella, rather, what do we do? In ken kavasu, unless you ate a lot, right, as we said, 200 grams, right, 4 eggs worth, right, whatever. או אכל שיעור שדרך בני אדם לקבוע עליו. וכבר כתבתי בסימן קנ"ח, so I already wrote in chapter 158, שלמד הרשב"א, מירושלמי, learns מירושלמי the רשב"א, שאינו צריך ליטול שתי ידיו לפת יבא בכיסנין. You don't have to wash your hands for this kind of bread, unless you're having, as we said, right, the larger amount, right, which is already like a meal. אלא די בידו אחד, ואני כתבתי שם דדידן לא בא ליטול אפילו ידו אחד. So it says we don't have to even wash one hand, right, for this kind of bread. The Rashba seems to say you have to wash one hand, but the Beit Yosef says no, even that you don't need. So that's the Beit Yosef. So I guess we'll read the Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. Let's see if we can knock it off tonight. If not, we'll continue. Okay. Yeah, so it says Shulchan Aruch like this, right? Pata Baba Kistin, right? So again, right, the question is, what is Pata Baba Kistin? What is this defined as? Yesh mefarshim, some say Pata Asui Kimin Kisim. We're talking about pockets, right? With filling inside. Shemamarim otam devash or sukar. We put inside all that filling in there, whatever it may be, right? Whether it's honey or sugar, Egozim or nuts, right? Shkedim, tavlin, spices. Vehem nikrim rish golash, okay, or rial chushu, whatever, right? All kinds of interesting names. ויש שאומרים שהיא עיסה משאירת בה דבש. Another opinion, second opinion is what? That we're talking about, right, where we have bread, which is the dough is flavored, right? Sweet or some spices, whatever it may be, right? Or milk, right? Or oil, right? All kinds of shemen with the chalab, minit tavlin, gafa, and he baked it like that, right? So it's a flavored dough. It's not a white dough. והוא שיהיה טעם תערובת המין פירות תבלין, נקרא ביסה. But it has to be recognizable, right? If it's not enough, to taste it, then it's negligible. But if you can taste it, it's mezonot. That's what we're saying, right? So it brings the Rama over here, right? As we said, this is the Ashkenazi side, right? So says the Rama, right? Some say this is like bread. What are you talking about? But that's what we have Ashkenazim on Shabbat, they eat that stuff. Unless, it's enough to make it like a cake. Lekech, right? It's like a cake by them, So if it's sweet enough to be a cake, that's mezonot, okay, even according to Ashkenazim. But if it's not that sweet, right, just sweet challah, so that's the custom by us, by the Ashkenazim. The Ashkenazim, as we said, right, on sweet challah, which they call, right, egg challah, the Ashkenazim, they call it egg challah, right? So egg challah for them is hamotzi. That's what they do on Shabbat. As we said, right, for the Rambam, this is mezonot. Right? Okay. So then we have the third one, right? יש מפרשים שהוא פת בין המטובלין, מטובלת או שאינה מטובלת, שעושים אותם כאחים. Then we have the crackers, right? Third opinion, right? The crunchy stuff. יבשים, כוסים אותם, right? והם הנקראים, they're called, right? Bishkonish. Okay, whatever. והלכה כדברי כולם. So it says, right, Shulchan Aruch, we pass like all these opinions, שנכל אלו הדברים נותנים להם דיני שמרנו פת הבא בכסלין. So what do we say, right? That we call them all mezonot, these things, so therefore all of them are mezonot. Right? So Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rambam, right? That sweet bread is mezonot. But here's the thing, right? That, as we said, right, the Rama argues with this, and the reason is because by them that was a meal, that was their Shabbat meal, So the truth is, you can say that in any country, where sweet bread is considered to be a meal, so then you can go like the Ashkenazim, Well, it doesn't matter if you're Sephardi even maybe, there's a side to say like that. There are also others who say no, you cannot do that. Since the Rambam said everything which is flavored and sweet is mezonot, so we shouldn't change that. Two different approaches about that. Big machloket. That's exactly the story I told you about that wedding, right? That's exactly the point there. Okay, so Bezat Hashem, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness, right? And we'll see you Bezat Hashem tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov. Pray for the success of our soldiers. They're doing an incredible job destroying all those Nazis over there. It's all from Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us an incredible victory. So we'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
All the best.